Look at the phone in your hand, the shirt you're wearing, the device you're watching this on. What if I told you that all of them, and nearly everything else you own, exists because of a simple, boring metal box? A box that nobody notices, yet it's arguably the most important invention of the 20th century. This isn't the story of the microchip or the internet. This is the story of a box and the stubborn truck driver who used it to change the world. Before the 1950s, the world was a much bigger place, and moving things across it was a nightmare of organized chaos. Imagine a port in New York or London. When a ship arrived, an army of longshoremen would descend upon it. For days, sometimes weeks, they would load and unload its cargo, piece by painful piece. Sacks of coffee, bunches of bananas, crates of whiskey, brand new cars. Everything was handled by hand, hook, and net. It was incredibly slow. A ship would spend more time in port than it did at sea. It was fantastically expensive. Loading and unloading could account for up to 75% of the total shipping cost, and it was notoriously corrupt. Theft of cargo was so common, it was often just called the cost of business. This chaotic system was the bottleneck of the global economy. Everyone knew it was inefficient, but it was the only way things had ever been done. But one day, a man sat in his truck, waiting for hours as he watched this chaos unfold. His name was Malcom McLean. He wasn't a shipping magnate or an engineer, he was a truck driver from North Carolina. And as he sat there, watching his truck's cargo being slowly broken down and loaded, he had a thought. A thought so simple it was almost absurd. Why, he wondered, am I loading the cargo? Why can't I just load the truck? Or at least the box on the back of it? That simple idea would not let him go. For the next 20 years, McLean built his trucking company into one of the largest in America, but the memory of the port never faded. He was convinced his idea of intermodal transport, a single box that could go from a truck to a ship to a train without ever being unpacked, was the future. In 1955, he did something crazy. He sold his successful company for $25 million. He was betting everything he had on the box. He bought an old oil tanker and modified it to carry 58 large metal boxes on its deck. These were his prototypes, his containers. On April 26, 1956, his ship, the Ideal X, sailed from New Jersey to Houston. When it arrived, a hush fell over the Houston port. The old way of unloading would have cost $5.86 per ton. McLean's containers were unloaded by cranes in a matter of hours for just 16 cents a ton. It was a staggering success, a revolution. But the world wasn't ready for a revolution. In fact, almost everyone hated the box. The powerful longshoremen's union saw it for what it was, a threat to their very existence. One container, moved by one crane operator, could do the work of a 20-man gang. For the next decade, they fought McLean with strikes, protests, and political pressure, paralyzing ports for weeks on end. The great shipping companies hated it too. Their entire business was built around the old ships. Adopting containers meant building entirely new, expensive vessels. And the ports themselves weren't ready. They had no cranes, no storage yards, no infrastructure to handle thousands of identical boxes. McLean's revolution was dead in the water, and it might have stayed that way, if not for an unexpected catalyst, the Vietnam War. The US military had a massive logistics problem. It needed to ship enormous amounts of supplies to Southeast Asia, but the ports in Vietnam were small and inefficient. Things were getting lost, stolen, and taking months to arrive. In desperation, they turned to McLean. His containers were the perfect solution. They could be loaded securely in the US, shipped to Vietnam, and then trucked or trained directly to the front lines without being opened. It was fast, secure, and efficient. The military's adoption of the container on a massive scale proved its effectiveness beyond any doubt. It forced ports around the world to modernize and broke the resistance of the old guard. The box had finally won. The world after the container was never the same. In the 1970s, the shipping industry finally standardized the box. The 20-foot and 40-foot containers we see today became the global standard, and with that standard, the world began to shrink. The cost of shipping plummeted by over 90%. It suddenly became cheaper to manufacture a product on the other side of the world and ship it to your local store than to make it in your own country. This was the birth of globalization as we know it. Factories moved to Asia. Cities like Liverpool and New York, once mighty hubs of manual dockwork, saw their waterfronts fall silent. New megaports rose in places like Singapore and Shanghai. Today, about 90% of everything you buy travels inside one of these containers. There are over 20 million of them in constant circulation, a silent, automated fleet that powers our entire civilization. Malcom McLean, the truck driver, didn't just invent the box. He flattened the planet. He rearranged the global economy. He put the world in your pocket. So the next time you see a truck on the highway or a train loaded with these colorful boxes, remember the chaotic world they replaced and the stubborn man who refused to believe there wasn't a better way.